When we've struggled in an area for a long time, it's easy to think this is the way it's always going to be. I've always struggled in my finances. I never get any good breaks. My marriage will never improve. We just don't get along. Too often we see it as permanent. People tell me I've always been negative. That's just who I am. They've convinced themselves that it's never going to change. The first place we lose the battle is in our own thinking. If you think it's permanent, then it's permanent. If you think you've reached your limits, you have. If you think you'll never get well, you won't. You have to change your thinking. You need to see everything that's holding you back, every limitation, every addiction, every sickness, as only temporary. It didn't come to stay, it came to pass. The moment you accept it as the norm, the moment you decide this is my lot in life, that's when it can take root and become a reality. A stronghold in your mind can keep you from your destiny. If you just break out in your thinking, you would see things begin to improve. You may have struggled in an area for 20 years. The medical report says, just learn to live with it. But there's another report. It says God is restoring health back into you. The number of your days He will fulfill. Your attitude should be, this sickness cannot stay in my body. It's on foreign territory. I am a temple of the Most High God. In your career, you may feel stuck. You haven't had a good break in a long time. You've gone as far as your education allows. It's easy to think, I've reached my limits. This is as good as it gets. All through the day, you should declare, I'm not settling here. My greatest victories are still out in front of me. You have to stir up your faith. God is not limited by your education, by your nationality, by your background, but He is limited by your thinking. I'm asking you to stand against the lies of permanency, lies that say you'll never lose that weight, you'll never break the addiction, you'll never own your own house. When those thoughts come, dismiss them. Don't give them the time of day. God is saying it's not permanent, it's temporary. It didn't come to stay, it came to pass. In Deuteronomy 15, there was a law God gave the people of Israel that said every 7th year they had to release any Hebrew slaves. If you were Hebrew and owed another person money that you couldn't repay, they could take you in as a slave and make you work full-time until you paid them back. But every 7th year, if you were a part of God's chosen people, you had a special advantage. You got released. No matter how much you still owed, no matter how much in debt you were, in this 7th year, you were set free. All the pain, the struggling, the suffering were gone in one day. This tells me God never intended His people to be a permanent slave to anything. You may be in debt today, but God did not intend that to last forever. You may be facing an illness, but it's only temporary. You may be struggling with an addiction, but it's not going to keep you in bondage. I believe you are coming into one of your 7th years. The 7th year is when you break free from any limitation that's holding you back. Sickness, addictions, debt, constant struggles. It looked as though it would never change. It looked permanent, but then one touch of God's favor and it suddenly turns around. Suddenly you get a good break. Suddenly your health improves. Suddenly you meet the right person. Suddenly a dream comes to pass. What happened? You came in to a 7th year. Now quit telling yourself, this sickness is permanent. I'll always struggle financially. I'll never break this addiction. You are a child of the Most High God. You have an advantage, just like God promised the Hebrews. You are not going to be a permanent slave to anything. You have to get in agreement with God. Yes, I'm coming into my 7th year. It's my time to break free. Every chain has been loosed. Every stronghold has come down. I know I have been released into increase. I talked to a gentleman in the lobby of our church. He was in town for consultation at M.D. Anderson, Houston's world-renowned cancer hospital. For the last 3 years, he's had a large tumor in his stomach area. He went through chemotherapy and radiation, but nothing affected it. The doctors had been studying him and trying to figure out what to do next. About 6 months ago, he came to a Lakewood service for the first time and had one of our volunteer prayer partners pray over him. He went back to the hospital for more tests. The doctor was very puzzled. For no apparent reason, the tumor had started to shrink. It was about half of the original size. The man had not had any treatment in a couple of years. The doctor didn't understand it. He asked him, "What have you been doing differently?" The man replied, "The only thing I've done differently is I've had some people pray over me." The doctor told him, "You tell those people to keep praying, because at this pace, it's going to be totally gone in a few months' time." What was that? A 7th year. It looked permanent. Chemotherapy couldn't stop it. Radiation couldn't contain it. But our God can do what medicine cannot do. He's not limited to the natural. He's a supernatural God. It doesn't matter how long things have been that way, how impossible it looks. When you come into your 7th year, all the forces of darkness cannot stop what God wants to do. Is there something in your life you think is permanent? You think you'll never get well, never start that business, never get out of that legal problem? As far as you can see, the problem is permanent. God is saying, get ready. You are coming into your 7th year. The 7th year is a year of release. Release from sickness, from disease, from chronic pain. Release from depression, worry, anxiety. Release from bad habits, addictions. It's not only a release from limitations, it's a release into increase. God is about to release you into new opportunities, good breaks, new levels. He's going to release ideas, creativity, sales, contracts, business. The 7th year is when you get released into overflow, into more than enough. It's when dreams come to pass. Now you have to receive this into your spirit today. It's easy to think, this is never going to happen to me. I don't believe anything's going to change. I don't believe I'm coming into my 7th year. Then this is not for you. This is for believers. This is for people who know things have shifted in their favor. It's for people that know every limitation is only temporary. For people who know they're entering in to their 7th year. In 2003, Lakewood signed a 60-year lease with the city of Houston for our facility, the former Compaq Center, where the Rockets used to play basketball. We always wanted to own the facility, but the lease was the best thing at the time. 7 years later, in 2010, the city was running low on tax revenue and decided to sell off some of their properties. They called and asked if we would be interested in purchasing the facility. And of course we were, but it depended on the price. Brand new, a facility like ours would cost $400 million. The city ran its own independent appraisal. They got back with us and said, "We will sell it to you, not for $400 million, not $200 million, not $50 million, but for $7.5 million. Now we no longer lease, we own the property." Isn't it interesting? Our 7th year for $7.5 million. Only God can do that. Friend, there are some 7th years in your future. You may think, I could never afford that property. I could never get well. The chemo didn't work. I'll never meet the right person. No, you need to get ready. When you come into your 7th year, God is going to do more than you can ask or think. He's going to exceed your expectations. It's going to be bigger, better, and more rewarding than you thought possible. It may seem permanent now, but when you come into that 7th year, God is going to release you from leasing into owning. He'll release you from debt into abundance, from sickness into health, from constantly struggling into an anointing of ease. Why don't you get up in the morning, dare to say, God, I want to thank you that I'm coming into my 7th year. Thank you that you're releasing me into the fullness of my destiny. I am free. When you believe, all things are possible.
Let me break it down. Break it, break it, break it down.
Để em được ngã lưng lên một chút. Cô đơn trên sofa, con tim như tan ra, dính lối em trôi theo một khúc ca buồn. Giữa căn phòng ánh đèn chớp tắt, che đi giọt buồn sắp rơi. Cô đơn trên sofa, sao anh yêu cô ta, chẳng phải anh yêu em hơn cả anh mà. Để cho thanh xuân này chớp tắt, che đi giọt nước mắt rơi. Thì ra là thế, tình yêu là tình chuyện mơ. Một ngày vẫn trôi, đôi môi em phai màu nắng. Nếu không em thì em có buồn. Hóa ra chỉ mình em đáng thương. Đừng buông lời hứa, rồi phải tôi chẳng sợ như anh đưa tôi. Đừng tìm đến em, giờ tình tôi xong lại đi. Đã xuyên qua anh mấy giây vời. Xong tim em vài giây cuối thôi. Để em được ngã lưng lên một chiếc sofa. Để nghe một phút tình em bình đến thì là. Để em được sống vô tư như một bông hoa. Giữa bầu trời kéo xa. Trôi tôi mệt mỏi nghĩ suy. Người ơi hãy nói anh em một lý do đi. Vì sao lại em vẫn giờ chết hoa đi. Vì sao lại em cô đơn thành dòng. Nỗi buồn sâu tâm hồn em trôi lên tay trong căn phòng. Rồi lại rơi xuống trên sofa. 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 Rồi lại rơi xuống trên sofa.
Let me break it down.
I received a letter from a lady who had been in an automobile accident and broken her neck. She lived in constant pain and had had several surgeries. For months, her husband had stayed home to take care of her. She felt bad that he missed so much work and finally convinced him that she was well enough to stay home. One day she was in so much pain and so deep in depression that she decided she was going to end her life. She couldn't walk on her own, so she was going to crawl over to the corner where the gun rack was. Her husband was an avid hunter, had several firearms. But when she got out of her chair, she lost her balance, knocked over the end table, and fell flat on her back and couldn't move. The remote control for the television hit the floor and the batteries tumbled out. When it hit, it changed the channel on the television from what she was watching to a channel where I was speaking. Her first thought was, oh great, I'm lying here dying, now I've got to listen to this TV preacher to add to my misery. That day I was talking about how God can turn any situation around, how He can take your darkest hour and turn it into your brightest hour. She began to feel a peace that she had never felt before. She said, I was lying there, I couldn't move, couldn't open my eyes, but I felt tears of joy running down my cheeks. Her husband came home a few hours later and found her sound asleep on the floor. Startled and alarmed, he woke her up saying, honey, are you okay? It looks like you've had an accident. She smiled and said, it was no accident. That day was a turning point in her life. Hope began to fill her heart. A dream came back to life. Today, she's not only free from pain, but she can walk. She's healthy, whole, stronger than ever before. When it looked impossible, when all the odds were against her, when it seemed permanent, the Creator of the universe, the one who has you in the palm of His hand, said, wait a minute, she's my child. She's my daughter. She has a special advantage. She's not going to be a permanent slave to anything. She's coming in to her 7th year. Maybe like her, you've lived with that sickness, that chronic pain long enough. You put up with that depression, that dark cloud following you around long enough. You've struggled with that addiction long enough. God is saying, this is your time. Today is your moment. Get ready for release. Get ready for a breakthrough. Get ready for healing. Get ready for increase. Get ready for your 7th year. How do you get ready? Start talking as if it's going to happen. Start acting as if it's going to happen. Start thinking like it's going to happen. Well, Joel, my arthritis has really been acting up. My diabetes is getting the best of me. My financial difficulties are really weighing me down. Don't take ownership of those things. It's not your diabetes. It doesn't belong to you. It's not your arthritis. That's not part of who you are. It may be there temporarily, but that's not where it's staying. Don't give it a permanent address. In your mind, don't let it move in and take up residency. You need to hang one of those signs that say, no vacancy here. The Apostle Paul put it this way, these light afflictions are for a moment. In your mind, it may be big, but by faith, you need to see it as being light and temporary. This is what Moses did. The Israelites had been in slavery for many years. It looked permanent, as though it would never change. Moses had a son whom he named Gershom. Names had a lot more significance back in those days than they do today. Gershom means, I am an alien in a strange land. When Moses named his son, he was making a declaration of faith. He was saying, we're in slavery, but slavery is not our norm. This is not our permanent address. We are foreigners in this land. Every time he said, good morning, Gershom, he was reminding himself this lack, this trouble, this slavery is not our normal state. When you're in tough times and it looks as though you're never going to break out, you have to do as Moses. Tell yourself, I won't be staying here long. I am a foreigner. I don't have citizenship here. You could say, I am not a citizen of depression. I am not a citizen of lack. I am not a citizen of cancer. This disease is alien to me. It is not my norm. It may be where I am, but it is not who I am. I am blessed. I am healthy. I am strong. I am victorious. Anything to the contrary, you need to see as foreign, as temporary. It is not your permanent address. In the scripture, King Hezekiah was very sick. The prophet Isaiah came to visit him at the palace. He said, I have a word from the Lord for you. I can imagine Hezekiah perked up, said, yes, what is it? Isaiah said, the word is, set your house in order. You will surely die. Not the word he was looking for. I'm sure Hezekiah thought, is there another prophet out there? His situation looked permanent, as though his days were over. The prophet who spoke for God had just announced that his life was coming to an end. Hezekiah could have accepted this and thought, this is my lot in life. But Hezekiah had a boldness. He chose to believe even when things looked impossible. The scripture says he turned his face to the wall and started praying. God, I'm asking you to give me more years. God, I'm not finished. I've served you. My family has honored you. God, let me live longer. Before Isaiah could leave the palace grounds, God spoke to him and said, go back and tell Hezekiah I'm going to give him 15 more years. Here's what I want you to see. Hezekiah's faith is what brought about his 7th year. Your faith is what causes God to move. Well, Joel, I'm 65 years old. I've never had a 7th year. Are you releasing your faith? Are you thanking God that it's turning around? Are you declaring where I am is not where I'm staying? This sickness is temporary. I'm coming out of debt. There are new levels in my future. I am free. When you have this attitude of faith, speaking victory over your life, that's when the Creator of the universe will show up and do amazing things. Your faith can bring about your 7th year. What's interesting is that when Hezekiah got the news that his life would be extended, he didn't feel any better. He didn't look any different. The only thing that had changed was God had said that his life would be extended. Here's the key. Hezekiah didn't wait for his health to turn around before he gave God praise. He didn't wait until he felt better to start talking as though he were going to live and thinking as though he were well. It's easy to think, when I see it, I'll believe it. But faith says you have to believe it, and then you'll see it. Like Isaiah, I've announced to you that you're coming in to your 7th year. Now you can look at the circumstances, study the financial report, see how you feel, and think, hey, doesn't look any different. I don't see a sign of anything changing. As soon as it starts to improve, then I'll give God praise. No, your praise is what activates God's favor. When you have the boldness like Hezekiah and say, God, I don't see how I could get well. The medical report doesn't look good. I don't see how I could meet the right person, how I'll ever afford my own home. But God, I believe you have already made a way. I believe I'm stepping into a new season of favor. I believe I'm entering into my 7th year, that every limitation has been broken. So Lord, I just want to thank you for your goodness in my life. When you talk as though it's going to happen, act as though it's going to happen, praise as though it's going to happen, that's when God says to the angels, turn around and go back and tell them they're coming in to their 7th year. I'm going to do what they're asking. I'm going to change what looked permanent. But a lot of times, instead of taking our praise to God, we take our problems to God. God, I've had this addiction for 27 years. I don't think I'll ever break it. God, these children are getting on my nerves. You better keep me sane. I'm working 2 jobs. I still don't have enough. God, I just don't understand it. It's easy to turn prayer into a complaining session. But remember, God already knows your needs. You don't have to tell God everything that's wrong, what you don't like, how long it's been that way. It's much better to take your praise to God rather than your problems. Your financial situation may not look good, but turn it around. Lord, I want to thank you that you're supplying all of my needs. Thank you that you're Jehovah Jireh, the Lord my provider. You may not feel well, but instead of complaining, Lord, thank you that I'm getting healthier, stronger, better every day. Your son or daughter isn't doing right. Lord, thank you that my children will fulfill their destinies. Praise gets God's attention, not complaining. When Saul of Tarsus was blinded by that great light on the road to Damascus, God spoke to Ananias to go pray for him. Saul had been killing believers and putting them in prison. Ananias said, Lord, I have heard many reports about this man and all of the harm that he's done. Notice this passage. I've heard that he's killing people. I've heard that he's dangerous. I've heard that he doesn't like believers. If you're always telling God what you've heard, you're going to miss out on God's blessings. You'll get discouraged. Doubt will fill your mind. God, the financial report says, I'm never going to get ahead. God, my children are running with the wrong crowd. Here's the key. Don't tell God what you've heard. God says you're the head and not the tail. Now don't tell him all the reasons why you're not. God says you will live and not die. But God, the medical report says otherwise. No, quit telling God what you've heard. That's not doing you or him any good. It's really simple. Don't take your problems to God. Take your praise to God. Lord, I want to thank you that with long life you will satisfy me. Even though my condition looks permanent, Lord, I want to thank you that I'm coming in to my 7th year, a year of release, a year of healing, a year of breakthroughs, a year of abundance. Isaiah said, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me to announce freedom to the captives." He was saying, in effect, things may look permanent, but I'm announcing your freedom. I'm announcing you're coming out of debt. I'm announcing that sickness is not going to defeat you. I'm announcing new levels are in your future. Then he took it one step further. He said, I'm declaring the year of God's favor. Notice this principle. He announced it, then he declared it. What if we were to do the same thing? I'm announcing today we're coming out of debt, struggle, not getting ahead. I'm declaring we are coming into increase, overflow, abundance. I'm declaring we will lend and not borrow. We will be able to give to every good work. I'm declaring we're blessed, prosperous, and generous. Over our families, I'm announcing that our children will not run with the wrong crowd, making poor choices, getting into trouble. I'm declaring, as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. I'm declaring the seed of the righteous will be mighty in the land. Or how about this? I'm announcing we will not live negative, depressed, worried, stressed out. I'm declaring we are happy, content, confident, secure, full of joy, loving our lives. You have to announce it and then declare it by faith. Nothing you're saying may be true at the time. This is what faith is all about. Too often, we're announcing and declaring the wrong things. I've been single so long, I'll never meet the right person. Prices are so high, I don't see how I'm ever going to make it. That's announcing defeat and declaring mediocrity. You have to change what's coming out of your mouth. Start announcing freedom from anything that's holding you back. Freedom from loneliness, freedom from depression, freedom from addictions, freedom from constantly struggling. Dare to do as Hezekiah did. Start boldly declaring, I am free. I am healthy. I am blessed. I am victorious. God's favor is coming. Breakthroughs, healing, promotions are on the way. You may have struggled in an area for a long time, but let me declare this over you. It is not permanent. You are coming in to your 7th year. This is a new day. The tide of the battle has turned. Every chain has been loosed. Every stronghold has been shattered. Every limitation has been broken. You are breaking free into a new level. I believe and declare God is releasing you into increase. He is releasing you into opportunity, into favor, releasing you into healing, into breakthroughs. He is releasing you into the fullness of your destiny.